everybody. So glad to see all these people tuned in. How are you doing today? My name is Felice. I am the CEO founder of FMK Media LLC. And I want to say welcome to the very first virtual live Q&A with award-winning author of Through the Fire, the book, Miss Felicia Alford. So I want to introduce her before bringing her on. Miss Felicia is a Chicago South Side native and first-time author. She is a mother of two beautiful children who has embarked upon a very, very successful career. She has worked diligently for everything she has accomplished with over 20 years of elevated leadership and brand management. She has mastered her tenure as a corporate sales executive in the beauty industry. Just recently, Alfred was awarded the 2020 annual award from APS International for first place for her nonfiction novel, Through the Fire. Her story is rewarding and captivating and leaves us all in a suspense of the turn her life has taken. Miss Alford is someone you would like to know and will instantly love. And I know this personally. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce, as you can see, I'm super excited, Miss Felicia Alford. Hey, Felicia.
Hi. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. Like, this is your very first live. So I'm really
I know. I'm nervous. But okay.
That's okay. That's okay, because we're gonna have fun tonight, and I'm just glad that you're doing this. I know when we initially talked, you're like, "Look, this is not something that I do," but then it got people are like, "Let's see you live, let's talk." So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I'm just more of the behind the scenes type person, but
I totally understand. So I'm excited. I'm not going to hold people any longer. We did a countdown. We did an intro. So I'm sure people are really, really excited to get going. So let's get started. So tell us about Through the Fire, because I know there are still some people that don't know. So tell us about it. Tell us about Through the Fire.
Okay, well, first of all, Through the Fire is a true story that happened in 1964. It's about a Chicago detective and his family suffering an unforeseen tragedy that ultimately devastated the entire family, but in turn united the entire city of Chicago. What you'll find in the story is that it is engaging, it is riveting. It's going to take you through every emotion that you possibly have. You will go through an experience and on a journey with me as you read the story. So I'm excited about the story. It's my story.
Yeah, right. It's your story. And I mean, I know that the book, and this kind of goes into the next question, I know that the book highlights some of the tragedies that, your family has faced. So how do you talk about how difficult that was to write, and kind of how you decided to share those stories?
Well, first, it was extremely difficult. Let me say that anytime we are reflecting back, you kind of, even though it was before my time, before I was thought of, I know each character in the book because it's my family. So it kind of, it was hard to do at times, to the point where, I had to take some breaks. Sometimes mental isolation, a lot to do with this story, because you're feeling everything that went on. If it was happy, I was happy. If I was sad and crying, 9 times out of 10, what I'm hearing back, readers are crying as well. They're laughing. So I am thrilled about the whole process and the journey that it took me through, but it was very difficult.
Yeah.
As far as, what was the second part? I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Just how did you decide, like, what made you want to decide to share, I guess, that story? Because that is personal, right? I mean, that's something that's very personal to you and your family.
Actually, and considering I am a very private person, it was kind of a hard decision to make. But what came about, I was going through old articles and just old artifacts and belongings that my mother had given me, and came about some things that I had not discovered before, and realized that, okay, there's a story here. Do I tell it? And once I talked to a couple other family members, which, by the way, the entire book was done in the majority secrecy from most of my family. Only two of my family members knew that I was doing the story. So once I kind of confirmed with one, I realized that it was my grandmother who wanted this story told. So I kind of felt as though, well, I was appointed to do so. I have the information and I'm going to tell the story. So that's how it came about.
That's a blessing, like your people, your family, to say, hey, I need you to get on this. I know that was probably a lot of pressure too, but I think you did a
Yeah.
great job.
Thank you.
And me and you have kind of had conversations about like the history, right? Of
Right,
like
right.
in the book. Expound on how that relates to like you and the book, the viewers. Like maybe talk a little bit about the history.
Okay. Well, how the history piece came about, it serves as the backdrop for the story. Again, the story is from 1964. So I wanted to set the tone for the reader to experience everything that was going on around the story, what the culture was like at the time. So there's a timeline of Black history and other things going on around the country throughout the entire story. As you proceed through the story, I am also keeping you updated. We're starting from the Jim Crow Act. We're going into civil rights. We talk about racism. We talk about segregation. We talk about unity, perseverance, everything. People, monumental figures in Chicago, such as the late, great A.R. Leak of A.R. Leak and Sons Funeral Homes. Actually, people like Mayor Harold Washington, all the way up to Barack Obama. So it was important for me, a lot in my personal and professional life. I say every day, we are students as we are teachers at the same time. So it's important to always learn no matter what we do. I feel like you can teach someone something. Everybody has a story. This is just my story. But I needed to educate as well. It's very important. And more so in part for my children and their children. They need to know who they are, where they come from. If I'm going to tell the story, I want the story to be told generation after generation after generation.
Yes, that is so key. And I think like it's important to not be afraid to pass that on, right? With what you were just saying about all of the history, is that kind of maybe expound on like the title of the book, right? Through the Fire. Because like when you hear that, you're like, man, what's really is
Yeah.
it literal? Like what is it? So
Yeah.
talk about that, talk about the title for that. Like how did you come up with that title?
Well, obviously, if you take a look at the cover, I kind of wanted to tie everything together where you can kind of piece together the story without knowing the details. I wanted to intrigue you every step of the way, from the cover to through the story to the back of the story. From the trailer, I wanted to intrigue you. So obviously, the story is about a Chicago detective. The unforeseen tragedy is a fire. There is one particular sentence in the book that tells you exactly why the title uh, is Through the Fire. But you got to read the story to find out.
Yeah, and that's the key, guys. We got to read it. All these 17 people viewers right now, you have to read the book to figure it out. So I figured that, and that's usually always how it happens, right? Like this is a
Right.
little bit, but you got to definitely read it. So that's understandable. So in the trailer, right? I know there were some people that kind of came on in the late, in towards like the end of the trailer part of it. But talk about your Sid Rai logo, and I'm gonna kind of like put this up so people can actually see it, but talk about that. Like what is it, what does it mean? I'm going to just go ahead and talk about this. I'm gonna kind of let you do the talking here.
Okay, well, Sit Right came about again. I've been in the beauty industry for over 20 years now, from training and development to corporate sales, brand managing, all of that. So, if I was going to self publish a book, why not? Began to brand myself.
Right.
So, it came about. I need what's going to be the name. So my children are Ryan and Sydney. Sid Ryan are my children's names backwards. And everything is to be, you want to pass on to generations. You want to give them something. So everything that I do uh, is about my children and for my children. So Sid Rye uh, is me paying honor to my children, actually. The icon itself, it looks like a little bird. It's the phoenix rising, because it is the story in itself. It's rising. It's no longer in the ashes because I'm talking about it. So it's the phoenix rising. That's the story.
Wow, that's so dope. That's really creative to have um your kids with the name. I didn't realize that. Not clearly I knew like who, like I've met your son before,
Yeah.
and have met your you talk about your
Yeah.
daughter a lot. So yeah, I didn't think about that. Now that's just actually
Uh-huh.
hit to me that that's what that means.
Uh-huh.
And I love the logo. I think it's absolutely great. So we talk about this book like it's nonfiction, clearly, right? This is
Yeah.
a nonfiction book. This has happened. This is real life events, but there are some like clearly, like if there were some main characters that you felt like you connected with most,
Uh-huh.
why were, or who would they be, and I guess would why would they be the connection for you?
I guess obviously James, the main character, um, Glow, and then Keith. Um, Basically, James, because of his bravery, his courage, determination, um, Glow, just like that silent strength and faith beyond my imagination. It's just what those two were able to do is astonishing to me. Uh, I don't know too many people that could go through such devastation and come out of the other side and survive and still love as hard as they do. And that's as hard as they did. Um, and be as happy as they were. But now looking back, you realize some of it was not as happy. It was kind of like silent pain that
Mm,
you mask, and so I can identify with both of them in that way. Putting on that face, still having the strength, the courage to go back out in the world and say, we're not going to let this is not the end of us. And Keith, just how, he went on, just,
mm-hmm.
you got to keep going. And his tenacity, it was just, they were really, really, as I wrote the story and, you know, went through the emotions of everybody, even though I knew them personally. I
Mm-hmm.
am, they are my DNA, it's who I come from. I was still astonished quite a bit. Like, wow, I was, going through several realizations on my own, which was why, it was difficult at
Right.
times to continue to go on and write the story,
Mm-hmm.
and bring it forth, because I was learning as well as I was, repeating. And it was some aha moments and some pieces to the puzzle that I didn't know and things like that. So it was intriguing, just as intriguing for me.
Yeah, and you're literally, that's literally my next question was the challenges, because that's a challenge,
Uh-huh.
right? You're talking
Uh-huh.
about your family tragedies, And you're bringing that to light, and you're talking about those publicly, right? Like that's a challenge. That's not easy. So in addition to kind of writing it, were there any
Yeah.
other challenges that you face? You talk about just like having those aha moments. Like, was there anything else that kind of happened and you were like, okay, writing this is probably a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be, but clearly there's a reason why you wanted
Yeah.
to talk about it.
Yeah. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a book. No, it doesn't
Right.
happen that way. It didn't happen that way for me. It actually came out a year behind what I intended due to uh, setbacks, be it doing the manuscript and like, okay, setting what I realized is I can set dates and deadlines, but it doesn't work that way.
Right.
My mind may not have been in that space. A lot of times I would write after, work, I would write late at night. And sometimes I would just kind of shut down where I was, you get writer's block at times. And yeah, things like that kind of put a hold on it and set my expectations at times too high.
Mhm.
And realizing like, okay, maybe that's not, right now. Maybe that's not short term. And also changing my mind on how I saw things coming into fruition. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that can be very difficult, and I applaud you on that because not a lot of people are comfortable with telling their stories. I mean, that gets personal,
Hmm.
right? I mean, you're sharing
Hmm.
a piece of something that is not going anywhere. It's published, right? It's not
Right.
going anywhere.
Right.
But so on to more of like a personal fun type of question. You're an
Yeah,
author,
absolutely.
right? You're an
Uh-huh.
author.
Still getting
Um,
used to that title, but I
right.
guess, yeah.
And this is your first time, but I feel like it's not your last. So I feel like there are definitely more stories to tell. But even as an author, do you have like a favorite author of a favorite book? Like, is there anything that you're reading now that you would like to share with
I
your
do
viewers?
have a favorite author. It's Zane.
Okay.
And if anybody knows Zane, we can get a little erotic at times and things like that. It's definitely sexy.
Yes.
But I love Zane. And currently, yes, I am rereading The Hot Box.
Okay. Okay.
That's one of my favorites by Zane. Yeah.
Yeah, she I know I was following something on her Facebook not too long ago, and there were a lot of people that are really still, I mean, like I was younger knowing about who Zayn was, and now
Uh-huh.
like that even still evolved now is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so what would you like to, because we're concluding our portion of it, and clearly we'll have a section if there's anyone in the comments that want to ask questions, but what would
Okay,
you like the
absolutely.
reader to gather from this experience, like the story, like specifically like through the fire? Like, what would you want them to gather? Because I know that there are a lot that want that people need to read this story, right? They need to hear
Yeah.
about what happened.
Yeah.
It's some history in this. Like,
Mhm.
what would you want them to like to gather from this story?
Honestly, what I tell people, I'm mostly interested in what journey the book allows the reader to take. I always say this is my story, but it's not just my story. It's through the fire, and it's perfect for today's climate. We're all going through fires right now.
Absolutely.
Um, the story as you go through those different emotions, it's like I want to know, did it resonate with you? Did it touch something with you? Did you reconnect with something that may have happened past, present? you know um how did it affect you as a reader? What's your story? This is my fire. What's your fire? Let's talk about it. I want to know because for me, I'll give a little bit away. As I close the book out, I ended one of my points is, and now the journey of healing can begin. So it's truly a path for me and my healing process, which is something I find that I think we all have something we can heal from or help someone else heal from, or,
Mm-hmm.
just by telling our stories. If I can encourage one person um, to reconnect with something or share with someone else and
Mm-hmm.
experience and say, oh, this is what happened in Through the Fire, but for me, it made me realize this, or I was able to talk about this, or I was able to overcome this hurdle, this obstacle, this challenge, this opportunity. I want to know that, because for me, then my work that I intended is done.
Yes, and that is so powerful because, like I said, a lot of people are not comfortable with that,
Yeah.
and it takes a very strong person. So I commend you. I really do commend you because, again, you're getting public with something that it's personal to you. And
Yeah.
like you said, if you can't touch someone, or if the story was not able to do, you want that to happen
Right.
when people read
Right.
the story, and that's the key. So time is really flying. Like we're
It,
already 27
I feel
minutes.
like we just got on.
Exactly. Like this is really going by really fast, but we're down to our last question. But I want to give the viewers out there. I know there's over 10 of you here. This is a live Q&A for Miss Felicia. If you would like to ask a question, please ask it in the comments now, and then we can segue and see if anyone would like to. If you're not afraid, don't be shy to ask a
Yeah.
question for her before we go off. But before we go into the last question, well, I guess before we go into the live Q&A, I want to extend this opportunity to invite, or you to tell people how they can connect with you, like via social media, or like, is there any book
Oh,
or anything that you got going
absolutely.
on? Yes.
Absolutely. If you want, because I like to respond to people. So on IG, the handle is Through the Fire, the book, the same as Facebook. You can reach me at Through the Fire, the book at gmail.com. There's a web page if you wanted to view anything about me, the bio, view the trailer. That is at throughthefirethebook.com. So if you can remember Through the Fire, the book, you got me.
Yay, that's great. That's great. That's great. So it looks like I think we've got some really shy viewers because we've got over 10 here. And I think they're a little shy probably to ask some questions. But I just want to say thank you because it takes a lot.
Absolutely.
When we first connected, you were like, and I remember us talking about
Never.
live streams, but getting
Yeah.
this is a big step for you. So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of your success. I know that on Instagram, you're getting like international people reach out to you, and I think that's big. And
Yes,
it's
it's
something
quite
that
a
you could
few. It's
do.
quite a few. India, it's really, really taken off over in India right now, as far as the interaction and the feedback, and people reaching out to me like, hey, you know, let's talk. I wanna know more about this. So I'm really happy about that, because a point to it, it's not just, I don't want people to think it's just like a African American story history. It is Chicago's own now. Let's be clear. It
Yes,
is Chicago's own, and it is Chicago's own Black history. However, the
yes.
story is just as much universal as it is Chicago's story.
Yes, and that's so cool. So I guess I called some people out, or some of our viewers, because they're asking questions now.
Right,
Right,
right. Ask away.
that's right. This is a virtual live Q&A.
You
Miss
got me.
Melanie,
Ask.
yes, please ask. Miss Melanie wants to know: will you be writing another book?
I have a couple projects that are in the works right now. People are asking for a follow-up book. Actually, it wasn't the plan,
Okay.
but I am considering. I don't know. I don't know. But there's a follow-up, but it may not necessarily be in book form.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. So thank you, Melanie, for asking that. We have another question, Miss Jiffy. She says, "How do you feel now that the book is complete? Like emotionally, how do you feel? Does it? I guess if she's asking, is like a burden lifted, or like how do you feel about that?"
Yeah, yeah. It was almost like I didn't know how much, I'm gonna be honest, pain
Mm-hmm.
that was deep within.
Yeah.
So once I was able to get through it and tell it was lifted. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about other family members. I will say I am closer to family members than I was before I wrote the
Yeah.
story. We connected because what we didn't know, we all kind of have been experiencing the same thing throughout life, and we did not know this was a story for me growing up
Mm-hmm.
that was not really talked about in front of me. Let me say it that way. Other family members knew more about it, so for me it was kind of like, wow, this was the missing piece to the puzzle. So it was like, wow, so many emotions, but definitely I am proud that I went through with it. So I am much better, but I'm still healing. I'm a work in progress.
That's good. Because I wanted, you said something about, it brought you together, and that's what it does. Like tragedy does that sometimes.
Hmm.
I had a passing. I want to say about 2 years ago now, and it brought I got closer to us out of my family that I usually had never gotten close to. So that tragedy will sometimes bring families together. It's unfortunate, but then it's also another reason. I guess another reason before that. So we have some more questions if you
All
want some
right.
more questions here.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Jiffy has another question. She wants to know how long did it actually did it take for you to decide to like begin writing the book?
It took about, for me to make the decision that, okay, this is a green light. I'm going to start writing. It took about a month of really, really hardcore thinking about it because I thought about family, you know, what would my family think if I told this story, if I shared it? I don't want to say told because I don't want to make it sound as though it's like a tell all, because it's certainly not that. It's definitely a story with integrity and
Right.
honor. And everyone who took part in the project, I want to say there were some other people who partner with me, uh, like Spencer Leak Sr.,
Mm-hmm.
Leak and Sons Funeral Home. He knew about it because he had to take part in the story if I was going to tell the story. My mother, my uncle, and a former Chicago Police Department superintendent, um, Jim O'Grady.
Okay.
So yeah, and it was all done again in secrecy. So, but it was good. It took about a month to really
Okay.
decide to push forward with it.
That's good. That's a good amount of time, I think. And to hear that all those people were like kind of working with and inspired you into going with that is powerful too. We have
Mhm.
another one from Jiffy. She asks, oh, I'm sorry, Melanie. I'm sorry, because they're asking great questions. Melanie wants to know, were your children involved in writing the book, and how did you address or share the story with them during writing your story? So I'm going to put the question up. I know that was a lot. Yeah. So how were your children involved in writing the story, and how did you address or share this story with them during your writing journey?
They weren't necessarily involved in the actual writing process of things. Did they know about it, find out about it at some point? Yes, I shared it with them and told them why, because they did not know of the story either. So I will say, once the book was printed, that's when they read the story. But until then, they did not read the story either. Either the manuscript, they knew pieces, but again, when I say private, Secrecy? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, yeah, and I figured that because a lot of people are asking now, kind of like, what made you write it and stuff like that. And I know you kind of answered it in previous, but yes, that kind of
Mhm.
expounds on that. We'll take a few more because I know I feel like now everyone's asking, and we could be on here all day because Felicia and I can talk literally all day. So I'm not going to take up too much of the time,
Yeah,
but there are a few more questions here if you want to answer them.
absolutely,
Miss
absolutely.
Kayla Dakota, she says, what tips do you have for people interested in writing a book?
Take your time and write your story. Tell your story, whatever that story may be. Tell it.
Yes, that's powerful. And then I have another one here. It looks like from Mr. Keith Spence. He says, what made you finally write the book? And I feel like maybe you sort of answered that already, but Keith,
That's
if
okay.
you're tuned in,
Yeah,
we'll go ahead and
that's all
answer
right.
this for you.
Absolutely. To go back, basically, I received confirmation that it was my grandmother wishes to have this story just not be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, once I received confirmation, once before I actually started writing, and then later during the writing process, I learned from my uncle saying that, yeah, that she wanted this story told. And I was like, wow, well,
Mm.
okay. Well, she appointed me to do so. So then it became a journey of fulfilling her dreams
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately resulted in being my dream.
Right.
So, yeah.
Very nice, very nice. And then I think we have one last question, another one from Miss Jiffy. She asks, was anyone upset or sad once it was released? You mentioned that you told one family member, but was there any kind of other type of feelings towards the book, or were they just kind of like, how did you feel like it was received, I guess, amongst
Well, okay, true story within a true story.
okay.
There was one person who I was completely, it took me a good, it took me a good 4 months into writing the story. I had already started writing the story, and I was so afraid to share with him that I was writing the story, in fear that he was going to say no, because just as it's my story, I felt like it's more so his story. So, in my opinion, if I did not receive his blessing, it did not matter how far I was along with the book, I was going to shut it down
Mm,
if I did not receive his blessing.
mm,
So once others said, you know what, you need to tell me, because I had tried to tell them, but it just didn't come out. It didn't come out.
mm,
Um, another month went past. I tried to tell him in 3 months. It didn't work. So a month went past. At 4 months, I was like, hey, I just got on the phone and called him. And initially, it was a shock. Like the response, like, you want to do what?
mm,
And I was like, okay, let me tell you how I'm going to write. It's this is my intention. And basically, after a good 30 to 45 minutes on the phone, he was like, hey, you know what? I get it. And you have my blessing. What he did not know was that if I did not get a yes from him, I was willing to lose and
mm,
just shut it down. That's
mm.
how important his acknowledgement and his blessing meant to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's so important because it's key for you. We have one last one, I promise.
Our last one
One
after last one after
last
last.
one. There Miss Ryan would like to know what inspired the front
Oh
cover
my
of this
God.
book.
Oh
I said
yeah.
that's why I said one last one.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So she just wants to know what inspired the front cover of the book.
I knew the title. It was about a Chicago detective, and I needed to put it all together. So it was my vision. I knew what I wanted. I knew at the time that it has to be fire. It has to be smoke. It has to be flames. It has to say, this is about an officer. This is about a policeman. So it was I could see it plain as day in my head. I just needed to put it together. And I was able to accomplish that with a graphic designer. So my vision was able to come forth. I think they did a really good job in what I saw. So also, I was able to go back and research. I actually had his star. And I was like, okay, so this is what it looks like, and this is the colors. I learned I had to do a lot of research back all the way to the 1800s of the Chicago Police Department, because I wanted to make sure I made no mistakes about which band, the colors around the police cap. Make sure it looked like the cap that was from the 1960s, not 2000.
Right.
Um, all of those details were very important to me. I needed to know, you know, the different stars and points on their actual stars and why it was placed, what the stripes was on shirts and this, that, and the other. So a lot of research went into every part of this book coming into fruition. But I'm pretty pleased with it.
Yeah, I personally love the cover of the book. And I remember that was one of the first things that I noticed when
Yeah.
I got it, was that I thought it looked like it was telling a story. So
And
I think you did a great job with that.
yeah, the other thing about that cover is my point to the designer was, hey, it has to look like it's coming through the fire. So I was like, I need like a 3D effect. I want the cap to come through the fire. So I was like, it needs to jump off the cover. It needs to get your attention. So yeah, all of those thoughts went into that cover.
Well, I think you did just that, and I want to say for your first live, I think you did amazing. I think this
I
went
hope
very well. I'm hoping that we can do some more like this. There are people with some questions and really
so.
eager to get
Absolutely.
to know you. So I'm really glad that you decided to come on board. This was a pleasure hosting this with you. I had so
Yeah.
much fun. And I'm gonna leave out with if there's anything else that you may want them to know that maybe wasn't discussed, or maybe an opportunity to say something else, and just kind of give you that platform before we exit on out of here.
Other than, I hope, everyone wants to go grab their copy, like, read the story, because I want to hear back from everyone. I want to know um, what your thoughts are. I'm very interested. I'm a first time author. And I looked up and I won an award, which means everything to me because I totally was not expecting that. I released the book in February of 2020, then COVID hit, and literally 5 months after releasing the book, I won first place for nonfiction. So that was just the
Woo!
icing on the cake for me. Totally,
Yes.
totally amazing. So yeah,
Yes, yes, yes. And that is
thank you, everyone.
big compliment. Yes, everyone's like, yes, yes. So that's good. I'm glad that we were able to do this. I do want to add everyone that Miss Alford is accepting bookings. So if there are any podcast shows or anything, she is accepting that. So her information, I'm gonna place that up on the screen here. Podcast, panel discussion, webinars, her email as well as the website is listed there. So please feel free to reach out to her through her social media handles. I know we mentioned this a little earlier, but I'm going to put that right back up on the screen. And then also, purchase the book. It's on Amazon. You can also get it from her site. So yes, everyone, people are saying congratulations. Yes, this
Thank
is a
you.
major accomplishment for you. And that's really it. So again, I think I had a blast. I
Thank you.
had
This
a
was
good time.
fun. This was
Yes,
fun for my first virtual. So
yes,
I'm
this is fun.
excited.
I
Everyone knows
can finally
I
see
like
you.
to talk once you get me started. I'll talk about the story forever.
Yes.
So there's been phone interviews and things like that. But this is the first virtual. So I'm looking forward to more. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So yes, I'm gonna end this out, and I'm gonna actually go ahead and play the intro for the people who missed it, because that intro was just the bomb.com. So we're gonna end out there, but thank you again, Miss Felicia.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am, and everyone tuned in. Thank you so much. This is great. It was an honor to host this with her, and we will chat with you another time.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.